it always goes through like a period of like you hate yourself and you're like, this isn't that good, and or like I'm not the artist that I thought I was at the beginning, and then by the end of it you're like, oh, you know what, that's actually kind of nice and I can tolerate looking at that.
Posture clinic.
Yes. Okay. So it was part of like a physio thing I was doing.
Okay.
Because drawing all day.
Yeah.
You start to get into like this like slouchy hunch and also like having one shoulder up all the time. I would get the craziest pain in my neck and like shoulder behind the shoulder blade kind of thing, and then even like numbness in my hand. So then I'm like, okay, I need to figure this out. So I went to do physio. And she was doing deep tissue sessions, I guess. And literally, I don't know if you've ever done it, but it makes like it's the most excruciating pain. Have you done?
No, I have tissue?
Not. Okay, yeah. It's like it's good. It's nice. It's like a massage, but like when you get a
aggressive,
massage, but like the most aggressive massage you've ever had. And like there were moments where I felt like vomiting. I was like, or like I was like tearing up, and I'm like, don't show her that. You're experiencing pain. But yeah, and then the posture clinic was just like an extra little class that she does like on top of things. And then so I did that because I'm like, I want to
not be a hunchback one day.
Exactly. So basically,
now I'm going to overthink this.
No, I know. But it's good to be thinking about it. So now it's like you try to like squeeze your shoulder blades together and then you like relax them. And that's like where they should be sitting essentially.
Because I definitely do a lot of like hunching.
And then your back has to have an S. So she like put this sort of band on my spine, and then it would show like how curved in my neck is and then how arched the back is. And then so your lower back is supposed to curve in, and then in the middle there, it kind of like lumps out and then it curves in again for your neck. But then mine, it was like my lower back wasn't like swooping in enough.
Interesting.
And then like, so it was all, so she's just sort of like telling me how to like properly align things. And when you're walking, it's like,
oh yeah, I've heard the, like, as if a puppeteer.
Exactly. Yeah. You got it. Yeah. So for those who don't know, it's like you're being pulled from a string, like up and back. And then another thing was like, imagine that you're holding like a grapefruit in between your chest and your chin. And then that's where your neck and like head should be sitting at all times.
Well, shit.
I know. You look like an alien when you do it properly, but
it's probably so you do this because you're an illustrator and artist.
Yeah. There we go. Yes.
Let's segue into
exactly.
What, like, was this covered by benefits or?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Okay. Because I don't have benefits. So.
No, I know. Exactly. I know. I would never do that without it. Yeah. So that's why I was doing it. And then like then I was like reaching the end of my contract. So I was just trying to like use them as much as I could. And then like got all the sort of issues sorted out. And then now I'm like, in the freelance world where you don't get those nice things. So yeah.
I know. Well, shit, I wonder how much a session of that would go for. Cause
I think it's like, I forget what it was.
How many did you go for?
It was like three sessions for the shoulder, and then my lower back. I've been throwing up my lower back too. Oh. It's all like a part of just sitting all day and not really thinking about your posture. And then I guess once you get to this age, it adds up.
I know.
And then
we're in our late 20s now.
I know. Even like, or it's like, just everything you notice when you're like drinking. And then the next day, it takes like a day and a half to get
3 days.
Yeah,
3 day hangovers. I know.
So
that's
like,
why I don't drink very much anymore.
Same. No, I'm like a 4 beer max.
Yeah, me too. I cut myself off at that point. It's like, nope. Tomorrow will be a bad day if I don't.
I need to be productive tomorrow. So I'm not doing this. Yeah.
So you went to the clinic for posture because you're an illustrator and you're hunched over all the time. So
yes, exactly. So illustrating. Do you want to talk about
yes, I'd like to talk about illustrating. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the posture was a good intro to this because I learned something just now. I'm quite happy.
Oh man, I'll even after, or we can loop back to the posture thing. I can assess you throughout the podcast. And tell you
please do.
Like,
I'd like that. Yeah. So you're an illustrator, and we met working on the Zelda project.
Yes.
But it was funny because I went to school with your sister.
Yes.
And did not know you, I think, until after I graduated.
Yeah.
Like I don't think we
so.
met
Yeah.
or anything. So yeah, like you're a freelance illustrator now. We'll start there and kind of move backwards a little bit.
Yeah.
What kind of like stuff are you illustrating now?
So like a lot of the time it's kind of like comic book covers or book covers or that sort of thing.
Cool.
Like any sort of badass image is normally what I end up doing. Or like I always say, like I just draw a lot of screaming muscular dudes and like, machines, like that sort of like thing is what I'm doing a lot of right now. So it's great. It's always funny, like, because anytime a new job starts, you get so excited and you're like, oh man, it's gonna be so awesome to work on this, and like you start envisioning it, but then by the end of it you like, or it always goes through like a period of like you hate yourself and you're like, this isn't that good, and or like I'm not the artist that I thought I was at the beginning, and then by the end of it you're like, oh, you know what, that's actually kind of nice and I can tolerate looking at that. But then
I don't always get to that point. I have the battle where it's like I'm not as good as I wished I was.
It's an ongoing thing.
Yeah, see, I'm proud of projects I've done for the sake of finishing them.
Yeah.
But
I know.
Not always proud of the actual piece itself as a standalone film or video or piece of art or whatever.
But is that with like client work or in personal work too?
More personal work.
Yeah.
Like client work, I've talked about this a couple times with different people. Client work, sometimes I feel like we feel like we're imposters almost, like we suffer from a bit of imposter syndrome where it's like, I'm not qualified to be doing
all the
this.
time. Yeah. But then also like with client work, I find it's just sort of like, well, I did the best job in the time that was given kind of thing. And I always like have to tell myself that it's like, there's the deadline and all like everything that can go wrong goes wrong normally. And then you hand it up, like for the most part, or there's like some every now and then that it's like, oh, that went really well. And that was great. Yeah. But I don't know. And but in personal work, it's like, you just don't have those deadlines. So you can like,
but it's your passion.
Yeah.
And you're like, ugh.
But no, it's funny how often that happens where it's just like, every time I'm working on something, I doubt myself and like what I'm doing. And it's like, I wish that I'd realized by now that like, this like that this isn't, I don't know what I'm saying. Anyways.
But okay, so you draw muscular dudes in cool poses.
Yelling, or screaming, and holding some sort of weapon, something epic like that is normally what I end up doing.
Yeah. In terms of the freelance stuff right now, like you were saying, you're working on a magazine at this point. Like, like what's as a freelance illustrator, what's your like daily life look like right now?
Well, right now it's like I split it up between, because I'm also trying to learn a bunch of things. Because it's like there's always new software to learn, or like new things that I could be adding to the portfolio. Or it's like every morning I wake up or just walking around and then I'm like inspired by something. I'm like, oh, that'd be so cool to create something that looked like this and whatever. So I try to split it up with like half my day I'm working on client work, and then the other half of the day I'm doing personal work and like learning stuff.
Cool.
And then somewhere in there fit in some exercising, and then I call that a day. Yeah.
Who are you working for right now though? If you're at liberty to discuss.
Well, I just don't know when the thing will come out, like the magazine thing. But it's a digital.
This podcast will likely not be out for like 3 months.
Okay.
Like just by the time I actually cut it and release it as part of the schedule.
Right.
So.
Okay. Well, it's like
I can cut it later if you're like, yeah, this isn't out yet.
No, it's not that like big of a. I just like, I think it in the contract it did say that, like, but it was like ImagineFX, which is like a digital artist thing, and cool. I will be like talking about it once I've like done it, but I'm like, they haven't told me when the actual like publishing date is, so we can talk about that. But
talk about it. We'll see where we go, and if I gotta clip it, I clip it.
So I met them. I went to this exposition recently a couple weeks ago in LA. It's called Lightbox Expo, and it was like this convention for concept artists and like people working in the entertainment field. And so they were there because they are a magazine for kind of like beginner to intermediate people that are interested in digital arts. And they get professionals to sort of do tutorials and sort of explain their process. And like, so the one I'm working on and what I do a lot of is like creatures, and there's some 3D software that I've been using a lot of recently, and then combining that with 2D and like all the painting stuff to create a badass looking image. And then yeah, so then I'm walking through that, and then there's a video component, and you show like, yeah, step by step how you're creating things and everything. And yeah, no, it's been cool. So like the 3D software is like been really exciting, because for the longest time, like if you were illustrating or doing any sort of like concept work, like I'll go through the history of it. I feel like it was like pencil and paper, or like, you know, using like colored markers and stuff, and that's what you'd create, and then it would be like that image on that piece of paper. But then eventually it became digital, where you're painting mostly in Photoshop.
Yeah.
And like always using the same techniques, it's just different tools to make things a bit better. Like with Photoshop, it's faster, it's easier to make changes, and then you have that one badass looking image. But then with 3D now, there's all these tools where it's like, you can, if you're working on a character or whatever, it's like I can sculpt that, and then you can use that for the one image, but you can also use it for like every other image you ever want.
So it's almost like, a bit more like modeling, and then
yeah, exactly.
And then you can take that model and like, you know, modify it or move it into a new location and create basically a new picture, rotate it, do whatever.
For sure.
Like you're creating a full 3D figure.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And it was so cool figuring that out, and like super challenging too.
Yeah.
But then I was like getting some mentorship from this guy who's kind of like this creature artist dude. He's also a huge fan of it, and a hell of a great guy. But he works at like a visual effects house in Toronto, and is like the head of their creature department. And then I just sort of got chatting to him through like one of these events, and he was sort of saying like, I really like all your designs and stuff, but it'd be cool to see them in 3D. And that was like around the same time that I was thinking that like, yeah, there's this program called ZBrush that I was like, which is the modeling program that I really wanted to learn. So then it all just kind of like, I was like, all right, sweet, I'm going to start doing this now. And then he kind of was like, yeah, like feel free to message me if you ever have any questions. And I took like full advantage of that, and just like asked him. And then so what he taught me was like, as much as you want to go sculpt all the aliens and monsters and creatures, like the most important thing to do is to learn how to sculpt the human body.
Yeah.
And like to me, I was like, okay, like this doesn't sound that fun. But it was crazy how much that has now helped me. Ooh,
it's all good.
Moving forward. I'm such a hand talker.
That's fine. Talk with your hands, man.
But yeah, so where was I? Yeah, so like the first body that I sculpted looked awful. And it's so weird that like you don't really see it until you look back on it, you know, like in the moment you're like, oh, this is the best I can do.
Yeah.
And he was like, all right, yeah, just sculpt like a human body. So I was like sculpting just like a muscly man, you know, as I do. And then, but then, yeah, looking back on it, it was just like the feet were off, like the neck was way too thick, and like it just looked ridiculous. And he was like, okay, there's like some issues here, and like where all the muscles are inserting and that kind of thing. And you're just like basic like structural anatomy. So he's like, what you got to do is start from the skeleton. So I'm like, shit, I just spent like a month or so working on this every day. And then I'm like, I don't want to like start all over again, but even from like an earlier point in time. But regardless, it was all worth it in the end. But then so I started like modeling every single bone of the human body, and then it was like and just like referring to these anatomy textbooks, and then it was like add in all the muscles, and then like where the muscles like attach on this bone and then meet up here and how they overlap, and then you add the skin and fat and everything. And then when it's all said and done, it's like you have this like human who looks like much better than the one that I started done, because it had like all the framework and like the structure underneath it. But then like,
well, is that because we know what humans look like? We're so hyper familiar with how humans move, what their bodies actually look like, that because for example, just I've been watching on YouTube and stuff like VFX reels from like Avengers Endgame.
Yeah.
And one of the things I saw was like they did a visual breakdown. Like, have you seen Endgame? And
yeah.
Is they did a breakdown of Rocket, the like raccoon. and it did the like little wipe where it's like it starts with some guy holding a fucking tennis ball,
Yeah.
and that's what their eye line is. But then it like wipes, and they had like full skeleton.
Yeah,
and then
exactly,
they did the
yeah.
muscles, and
Yeah.
then they did the like then the low res sort of poly render of him, and then the full final
Yeah.
render. And it was like it makes so much sense because we know inherently, I guess, how anatomy works in various animals and in ourselves. So if you don't do that, then it becomes foreign looking. Like
exactly. And then it's like if you're just sort of looking at the surface, like if you were to just model that raccoon just with all the surface things, it wouldn't move as real because it's like, yeah, they're literally flexing like every muscle or whatever that would be when it's moving the arm and stuff, just to like add that extra realism and get that believability. Yeah. This is kind of like going into character artist territory where like, so like a character artist is someone who does exactly that, like models the characters, whereas like a concept artist would be slightly the stage before that and they like design what it looks like. But it's like in order for, it's like, yeah, before it was just a digital drawing and then people would sculpt based on that. And it still kind of happens, but now that the sculpting tools are so easy to learn, it just like adds a little less redundancy in the process. So it's like the concept designer can like get the basic model going, and then the character artist would then like, make sure all the muscle insertions and anatomy is like proper and that it's working good enough to then, move it on to the rest of the process and be animated and rigged.
There's so much more to it than just drawing.
Exactly. Yeah. I know. And I'm just like, it's tough because I'm like kind of in this point where I'm like, my whole world is expanding into all this and I'm like just getting so excited at all the tools, but then also like, okay, I got to take it one step at a time and like try not to learn everything, try to get good at some things, and then, like slowly build from there. But it's like, it's just moving so fast.
But I mean, like you need to know human physiology to even draw or like Illustrator create these exaggerated characters. Like I mean, my mind just keeps going to Endgame because I've watched all these VFX reels lately, but like I watched a breakdown too where they took Thanos and like talked about how they have to like build him like having stubble, for example, because our human eyes are used to males having stubble, even though he's an alien and theoretically
doesn't have a beard.
And probably doesn't shave with a fucking razor. Like we would think like you might not be able to identify as a viewer like this looks weird or looks like too alien,
right?
Because he's a humanoid, and if you don't add these sort of like features,
I'll watch that. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, we'll pull it up after. That's like there's a lot more to it than like drawing cool pictures,
for sure, man.
Like, and I mean, I've watched you do some digital drawing, not recently, but like,
well, man, the skills have improved a lot since like you've seen me, but I'm sure, but like it's like, I know, and it is, I just like, that's what's so fascinating about it, and it's not, you're not just painting pretty pictures. It's like there's a lot of knowledge that goes into it as well. Like like all the anatomy, even if you're just drawing, like one of the most important things is doing life drawing classes, and that's like drawing naked people. And as like weird, it's like it's such a hard thing to like tell people or like convince them like why it's important to do. Or it's like, I'm spending like, for a while I had like classes at the animation studio that was like once a week. That was like one thing that I just wouldn't miss. And it's like once you know how to draw a person, don't you know how to draw a person? But it's like, no, like you're always like, I don't know, drawing like new forms, and it just like always like practicing those skills just makes like designing and drawing that much easier. And like, I don't know where I'm going with this, but like either way, it's like, I think the most important thing to do is like with both with the 3D and with life drawing is just like that basic human anatomy always sort of applies itself into like everything else you want to create, because like it's just the basic understanding of proportions and like scale and sizing and like how everything sort of like fits together and giving it that like real world believability.
Because it can be otherworldly and not anything that exists as you or I have seen it, but it needs to retain that sense of realism that we're familiar with. Or else it looks off.
For sure. And it just makes it that much cooler when like the way it's, and like a lot of the time, even if it is a creature, you're referencing like how say it's like got tentacles or something. It's like, yeah, how do octopus tentacles move or something?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you're always like basing it on something in the real world. And then, yeah, it just like, again, believability.
But how do you find, because I'm not in the illustration world. I mean, like, you and I have worked on a couple projects where you were like storyboarding.
Yeah.
That was how we met.
Yeah.
And then you did character design for these couple films that we were doing like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But like, how do you find work as a freelance illustrator now? Like, I have no idea. I would not have the first idea on like how does one get jobs doing that?
It's always, I guess, like there's a million ways of doing it, but for me, it's normally just been through word of mouth, like, or you just got to put yourself out there, really. Like, there's so many different platforms. So there's a thing called ArtStation, which is like a social media site, or like an Instagram, but solely for like artists. And yeah, so like you have your account and your portfolio up there, and then there'll be like challenges or job boards up there that you can like find stuff with that applies to you, or like people will be like doing the recruiting on that site. There's also Instagram, like all the dudes that worked on from what I understand, the Into the Spider-Verse movie, a lot of them were just found through Instagram. Like people followed them, like not like the actual animators and stuff. Those are probably all in-house at Sony, but it's like in terms of like getting the style and kind of like creating the world of that movie. I think from the podcasts I've listened to, it's like, like the art directors were just like, I like this dude from Instagram, or girl from Instagram. And and then they
see what they're up to.
Yeah. And then, so there's always put your stuff on Instagram as well. And then, so the job that I'm doing now, like this book cover, I met him at FanExpo. So I also, there's like FanExpo Canada.
Yeah.
That I try to do it either like twice a year. There's like Comic-Con and FanExpo.
Because you get a booth there, right? Like,
so I'll get a booth, and then I'll sell prints of like fan art stuff. Yeah. Just to kind of, keep getting a following, and like, again, like putting yourself out there, and it's stuff that you love to do anyway. So yeah, why not?
Cool,
there's like
cool screaming muscular monsters.
Yeah, exactly. Well, like, and all like superheroes are just like
superheroes will go
muscly dudes.
Is there any like? I was curious about this. Like, is there any sort of like legal ramification for that?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I know this is always like a good question.
Yeah, because like I mean, you're selling prints of characters that you're doing your own rendition of, I guess, like your own illustration, but you don't own them.
Totes my goats. Yeah. So like, and this is the thing. Like, I personally will not sell it outside of those conventions. Yeah. The conventions are kind of like the way it's been explained to me. So don't quote me on this. Okay. But it's like, it's kind of this gray area where it's like, it's fandom, it's fan art. Yeah. So they, you're free to just like sell the things there. But I think
a little bit of like a Wild West.
Yeah. And if they go after you there and are like, oh, you can't be drawing, like it's all promoting that character and whatever, right? But then, and also with those things, it's like, yeah, you can get jobs working for like the comic book companies and stuff. Like they'll have recruiters from Marvel and DC or whatever. But then
I guess it's just like too big of a monster to regulate, I guess, in some capacity. Like,
and even online, like a lot of people get away with selling stuff, and it's like, unless you're making millions selling something with Spider-Man on it or whatever.
Or you get these like 3D printed like Thanos Infinity gauntlets that people make and sell, or like Captain America shields and
for sure
Batman cowls.
Yeah, like people do it, and like all the power to them. But I personally will always tell people like, I just won't sell things online, because it's like, I don't want to get into any of that.
Or at least like, I mean, copyrighted content online.
And it's like, because to me, it's like, I'd like to eventually work for these studios or whatever. So it's like, I don't want to
burn that bridge before you've crossed it.
Not that like would, even if it did happen, I'm sure they wouldn't be like, hey, weren't you that guy that was selling? It's like, it's probably not going to happen, but still, I just like to be like, yeah, I'll just keep it to the FanExpo things. It's not like, it's like, and even with that, it's not like you're making crazy profit that it's like, oh man, I'm so happy I drew that Batman and like I made thousands this weekend. It's like, you pretty much break even with like your costs for the booth, and the prints and like your food and stuff for the weekend.
Well, essentially you're trying to like net zero and market yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. That's all it really is. So like one of the greatest parts about the conventions I find is just like it sounds so cheesy, but I love just like meeting the kids who are interested in art and
Yeah.
everything, and just being like, oh man, you can totally do it. And that's what like you were talking about earlier with this podcast, and I think is like a great message to always put out there, especially to like people of our parents' generation who like we're always taught like, you know,
Get a safe job.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then it's like, no, it is possible. You can do it. Like I'm doing it. And this is how, like, these are the different avenues that you could go into. And if you like drawing, like definitely do it. Definitely focus on your anatomy. And draw
Learn
some
anatomy,
humans.
kids.
Yeah. Draw some naked people. No, but that's like the greatest part. And then to see them year after year and then be like, oh, show me your stuff. And then like
do you get, I mean, how many years have you been doing FanExpo and
as long as I think like 4 years now or so. Yeah.
So like, do you recognize repeat people?
Totally. And that's the thing. Like,
that's kind of cool.
It is cool, but also like I'm thinking I should, if I'm going to keep doing it, I should venture out of Toronto.
Yeah.
Because yeah, year after year, you're seeing the same people for the most part. Or it's always someone like, oh, I bought that from you in the winter or something.
Mhm.
And you're like, oh, cool. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Like, it's still the same stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One by a second.
Yeah. Or like I did one new piece, but yeah. So if I were to like, there are people that like make a living just touring and doing conventions. But I just kind of see it as like, I'm going like, I'm keeping like, you know, my foot in the door there. And then also just like, yeah, again, it's just like a marketing thing.
Yeah.
Whatever.
But I mean, like at the same time, it's like, it's the small world situation too. Cause I remember seeing Paul Steinberg, who is a cinematographer in Toronto, posting on his like Instagram page, these illustrations of his camera as a marketing thing for himself. As like, and it was like your art. And I was like, what, how the hell do these guys know each other?
Yeah. And then I found out that he knew you. And I'm like, how did they know each other?
Like, and he and I have worked on project. I'm actually going to be working on a project with him in a few weeks.
Yeah.
And it's like this, but you met him through, like he just came by your booth at FanExpo.
And yeah, a lot of the time it's like people will see your style of work and be like, oh, I could, you know, like this is what I've been looking for this project. And yeah, depending on your availability, like I don't do as many commissions like that anymore, but when I was starting out, I was like, yeah, for sure. Like, and Paul is just such like a, what were we saying? Like magnetic personality and just like,
he's pretty big.
Yeah. And like, so it's just like, man, he could just like, he seriously convinced me to start like, or get into motorcycle riding. And like,
oh really?
It was like one time I was doing a job for him and we were just chatting about like, he takes his motorcycle through the Ottawa Valley, I think.
Yeah, he's
every,
explained
like,
this
fall.
to me. Yeah.
And like, oh my God, it was like, it just sounded like the most romantic like experience. Like just like you, yourself and the road. And like, oh man. So
I think he's talked me through that. It didn't convince me to buy a motorcycle.
Really?
But,
I like after that, I was like, okay, so how much is it to do classes? He's like, I'll give you the helmet and the this whatever. And then every time I've seen him since, he's like, have you done it? Like, I haven't had the time yet. I'm learning 3D, but then but
I'm drawing people, man.
Yeah, I'm drawing people, but down the road, I'm definitely gonna get a motorcycle. And right now,
that's fucking
I'm just
hilarious.
on my bicycle in the city,
riding around downtown Toronto.
Yeah.
So, but before, okay, so you're freelance now, and you've been doing these conventions for a while, but you were working for Studio, for a couple years, right? Like, was that as a staff position?
4.5 years.
Yeah.
It's always like there's always contracts, and then depending on like the availability of work, you get renewed for like if they have enough shows or whatever or spot for you, then like you get. And so I was just sort of
fucking hyper conscious of my posture.
Yeah, I know. Well, another thing with it too is like she was saying is you should never use the back of a seat for any seat. She's like, they're never like suited for proper posture, and that you should always sort of sit towards the edge of the chair, or if you have to, like I'm gonna push your lower back or like your butt as far back into the chair as possible, and then that'll like help. And then I'm like, so if you're on a plane, you're not using that backrest? And she's like, I try not to. I'm like, I don't believe that.
You're full of shit.
I need to see this person out in the real world.
Sorry, I totally cut you off there.
No. And yeah, so seriously, it's my favorite topic right now. I gotta keep. It's gonna be the most annoying thing to watch my shoulders.
No, that's fine. I'm gonna be watching myself now too when I cut this.
But it does make a difference. And then so there's also a bunch of stretches that she has me doing, as well, like 2 times a day. And since I've been doing them, yeah, like I haven't had the pain. It's weird. Yeah. I don't know. So
all right, well, I'm gonna sit forward like this now for the next little bit and see how I feel.
But okay. Anyway, so yeah, I was working at the animation studio, and yeah, it's another possible way to go if you're interested in painting and designing, or even there's also animation. But I think like that's one thing that like is like confusing to a lot of kids. It's like, oh, I like art, I should go into animation. It's not always like animation is making things move and animating things, whereas illustrating is like designing and like coming up with the look of something.
Still artwork.
Basically. So it's like, but you can also do illustration type work in the animation industry, where it's like what I was doing there was painting backgrounds and designing characters. Or when they'd have new shows in development, you're like kind of creating like the general like look and feel of the whole world and everything. And that can be a lot of fun. So it's like, but with that, and that was where in college, like, oh man, do you want to go like steps
bro,
back?
Let's do it.
Okay. Cause it's like, it just sucks. Cause for me, it was confusing at first, like cause I'd watch the special features of movies or like the behind the scenes and see like all the designing of creatures and characters and stuff, and then be like, oh, that's what I want to do. But then I have no idea like what that is or how you get there.
Yeah.
So then I was also like, my parents have always been super supportive, but then it's like,
I know your sister was in film with me.
Yeah. No, they're not like, you should have a stable job or whatever.
Yeah.
They've always been like, but it was just sort of like, I didn't know exactly what it was. And I knew that I was good with science and math and all those sorts of things. And then I was also good at art. So then I was like, okay, maybe I could there's drawings and textbooks. I could do the science textbook drawings and like scientific illustration. So then I went to university and did all that stuff. Like I did a bunch of science courses and just like the fine arts, which is just like basic drawing, painting and everything. And which is super great to learn the foundation. Promise I'm bringing this like to the animation thing. But then after graduating that, it's like that sort of preps you for this world of like gallery art.
Okay.
There's so many different like
curating and doing
or just like being like a full-time artist who lives in their farmhouse or something,
loft
and like
studio.
Exactly, and makes these like 20-foot by 30-foot paintings of just like black or whatever, like and I'm challenging this and like that's great, and there's definitely people out there who can make it work, but I always knew that I wanted something more commercial, and that like it's like I want to see my artwork on a screen, or like I want to I guess I just didn't want to be like that. I don't even know how, like, it just seems like a whole lot of grants. I don't even know how you
there's
make that.
Well, there's that too, right? Which is a whole trying to get your art grants and everything, and tons of paperwork and
the people that do it, like, all the power to them. I just like, it wasn't for me. So then leaving, I went to college, and that's where I went to Sheridan, and Sheridan at the time was like,
this podcast is gonna be a big Sheridan ad because so many of the
people. But yeah, because they for the longest time were the school, like, if you want a job at Disney or Pixar, like, this is where you go. Like, their animation program was the best. And then so that's kind of what like drew me into it. But then the more I looked into it, I was like, well, animation isn't necessarily what I'm into. Like, I don't care so much about how a character moves as much as like the look of things. So then I did illustration, but because I had all these years of the foundation stuff from university at Guelph, I was able to just do the last 2 years there, and then made it into an animation studio doing background painting and that stuff. What was I talking about?
Well, no, because I asked you like about working at that studio, and you kind of just you took it a few steps.
I know.
Back.
I feel like I need to kind of explain all that stuff because like it's like going through that. It's nowadays there. If you want to just do concept design, there's a bunch of online courses or schools that are
that's the case with most of these like creative fields. You can learn a ton of it online. You can go to YouTube University basically.
And how do you, because it's like, I feel like when I was going through school, if I were to take an online degree at that time, it still wasn't like reputable enough.
Sure.
You know, or just something about it seemed sketchy.
Yeah.
That I was like, well, I still need to be going to a college.
Mm-hmm.
But nowadays, I'm like, I don't know that I would recommend going to a college.
Interesting.
I would almost say like, yeah, just do the specific.
Build an online web portfolio type thing. And
well, it's just like there's like these great schools where it's all industry professionals that will teach you like exactly what you need to learn to, you know, in order to work in the field that you want to work in. But like that being said, there's a lot of other things that you learn at college that are important to be there for, like just sort of figuring out a lot of life things and your work ethic and just kind of.
It's also a point where you can hone skills with basically zero stakes.
Yeah.
Like you have no client that will never hire you again. You're doing this to basically, you're going to school so you can screw up.
Yeah.
Like, and make mistakes to try to minimize the amount of mistakes you will make in the professional world. At least that's how I have
totally
in retrospect approached college.
Yeah. And there's also like, even like this, it's like, we know each other through that. Like there's just so many relationships
too,
like that you form there.
Networking and meeting people.
Yeah. And like every couple of years or like couple months, it's like something comes up and it's like, oh yeah, so-and-so from this, like that, you know, from back in college, like needs a hand on this project and whatever. And it's like, yeah, that's all super important. Whereas if you were to just do an online thing, I guess you'd be in your own little bubble and wouldn't have those things. I don't know. I'm kind of like, I'm conflicted.
But at the same time, like, you could like, there's artists out there. I'm sure there's, I mean, hitting these sorts of gigs is like, you know, winning the lottery, but I'm sure there's a good number of just like artists out there who are making a fucking killing just doing like YouTube tutorials. Yeah. Like in ad revenue. Mm-hmm. Cause you can make just mad cash doing that now. Right.
Cash. Also, well, do you know about Gumroad as well? There's like a lot.
No, I'm not familiar.
Maybe it's more artist focused. It's another thing. Or there's also Patreon too. There's
Patreon. I know Patreon because like you can kind of cross-platform that thing.
Yeah. And like Patreon's a bit more like, I guess if you just want to be doing your own thing, like if you just want to be painting your own style, like a lot of it seems like anime sort of
Twitch
things
too.
Like, Twitch.
Like, run through Twitch.
Yeah, I know. And
like there's all these platforms where you can actually generate money.
Totally. And so like with Gumroad, what's great about Gumroad is it's like, anything that I would be doing in my own time just for portfolio work, you could be like recording that video and then like sort of editing it together and being like, okay, this is my process. This is like, here's how you build something. Here's how you build a human body in ZBrush or whatever. And then you just like have that.
That's interesting because you can like, you're not only generating an ability to monetize the art itself, you're actually like potentially monetizing the process of creating the art. Like,
which is it, like, if anything, that's the most important part, which is kind of crazy. Or like the only part I really care about is like anytime there's so many artists that like I follow that it's like, oh man, how'd you get that like that sparkly look on the thing or whatever? Like what effect did you use for that and all this kind of stuff? And like I way more care about seeing their like sketch and like the whole thing working up to the final, like more so than the actual like final piece of artwork. Yeah. But yeah. And I think like most people out there who are trying to learn all these things, that's what they care about. That's why they like be buying those Gumroad tutorials too. And
well, because they want to improve their own skills and see how other people are doing it.
And it's a great community. Honestly, it's like, man, I was such a noob and like didn't know much about the internet before like graduating college. Like I just feel
when did you graduate?
Well, I graduated college 2013. So I feel like at that point it was like,
it was not quite what it is now.
Not what it is now, but it's like there were all these, maybe, I guess. I just feel like I always look in the past and I'm like, oh man, if only I was a bit more like savvy and like
hindsight's 2020.
I know. But yeah, like whereas like in the past 2 years, I've taught myself so many things just through online tutorials.
And, 100%.
Another thing is I should point out is I was told not to say you taught yourself because you're not teaching yourself. You're learning from others.
Okay.
But like you're learning on your own, I guess.
Self-directed learning.
Self-directed learning. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but when you were at the studio, you were doing like background design basically and like character design. Is that roughly like, cause you worked on the Magic School Bus, like the 20
the Netflix.
Yeah, what year did it already? Did it come out in like 2017 or
2017?
Yeah. My God, already?
Yeah, I know. I know. It's crazy. That at the time was like the most exciting thing to work on too.
Yeah.
I love that, man. Because we grew up with the Magic School Bus.
Yeah.
We're like, oh my gosh. And then so yeah, like, and the writing in that show was so good.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Like in the original or the new one?
No,
or both?
the new one.
Oh, okay.
The new
I mean,
one.
like realistically, I've not watched the new.
No,
Magic
I know.
School
I
Bus
don't. And like even I think my family too. It's like it was all like such a big deal. It's like, oh yeah, the Magic School Bus. But then like everyone's like, oh, we watched a bit of the first episode. It was cool. Okay. Like, all right.
Well, I mean, it's like that. It's kind of like when I've worked on these like sports commercials and working with athletes. It's like it's like, oh, I know who that is. Like and you get this sort of like, oh, that sounds really cool. What you do? And it's like, well, most of the time I'm sitting in a computer and
I know.
Like,
yeah. But yeah, to explain the process at the animation studio. So like within an animation studio, there's like 1,000 different departments. So there's like, it starts with the script and then you have the storyboarding. And then from there, you're building your characters, which are basically like puppets. Now it's all digital, whereas like before it was all hand drawn. And that's what makes like a lot of the complaints for the new Magic School Bus was that it
didn't feel and look like the original.
But that's because it was like a totally different process that they were like, it was all
total different pipeline.
Yeah. Whereas now it's all digital and there are ways of doing it that can make it look close to that original style of animation. But it's like, you're basically building a puppet with like points,
joints and
joints that it's all like rigged and it's moving. So I
wonder if those complaints though are like just because there was such a big gap between the original Magic School Bus and this sort of like reboot version that it's totally. A big, because like if you look at The Simpsons, even in like 2000 versus 1991 versus 2010 versus, oh my God, that show's been going on for like 30 years now. The animation style is completely different. Yeah. Like, and its process looks different. The character, you can clearly tell that now they use like character models more than actual illustration.
And like, no one really cares or complains about that.
But that's because I think it was like a slow process. Over time, they refined it.
Yeah, you're seeing it evolve. Whereas with Magic School Bus, maybe it was like just that. Like,
it's just that it was this style.
Yeah.
Then
and
this style.
I know. Oh man, it was such like a crushing day at the studio. Like when we released the trailer and they just saw like all the negative feedback on the.
That's very interesting. You're the first person I've had on who's like had that sort of experience.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I know.
Like
because
just like the YouTube thumbs down
the
and
YouTube like
negative
backlash.
comments.
And then so I went away that weekend to this bachelor party in Nashville, and the whole time I was just like looking. I would like reopen my phone and like try to find like what people were saying. And it was just all these articles about like how they ruined the Magic School Bus. I was like, oh my God, this sucks. But it's like, if you look at old episodes, it's not that pretty. Like it's not like it's that I'm not saying that
it's bad.
Good. Yeah,
no,
or
but
that it's bad
aesthetic.
because it's like there's a lot of great people working on that show. Yeah. But like it's just like it's not. And then some of the complaints were that all the characters look the same or whatever, but it's like that if you look at the original cast, the faces were drawn similarly too. It's like there was a lot of things that
it's a completely different process in 2016 versus 1996.
And it was also a learning curve on that show too, where by the end of it, like I think we all sort of figured out like the best way, because in every show there's like, you're kind of coming up with a new pipeline and how you're building characters and then like the way that the final animation looks and the effects and stuff. And by the end of it, like it looks so good. I thought,
like crisp and just polished, and everybody's figured out the most.
And like just the way the characters are moving was a lot more natural and like had a lot more personality. And like, you just sort of like.
So you think flipping like from the first episode of the season, or at least I don't know what order, but like first produced versus last produced, there's that much of a noticeable difference?
To me at least.
Or at least to maybe the trained eye?
Yeah, like, maybe just because I was like in it and paying attention to it. Yeah, for sure. Honestly, I have nothing to say about that show. I love that show.
No, that's but what was the daily sort of like, what was the grind for that? Like what did you do every day when you were working on that show?
Well, so you get, there's like Fun Pack Artists, which is the greatest name in any, like, so they just do the initial sketches of like what the character looks like. And then I would get those drawings sometimes, not all the time. Like sometimes I would just have to create what the character looks like. You have like the script, and then there's like this set amount of characters, and then there's like, oh, there's a bird in this scene, or there's a little dog at this point. And so you just write down the list of like all the things that you like, all the assets that you need to create for the episode. And then, then there's the fun pack artist who will do an initial sketch of that. And then for me, I would get those sketches and then look through the storyboards and see what kind of movements they need to do, what sorts of views you need of that character. And if it's like, it's called like the full like turnaround of a character, where you're showing like the front view, 3/4 side profile, 3/4 back view, and then like turning them all the way around. If they're like a symmetrical character, you only need to do half of that. If they're like asymmetrical, like one of them had like a ponytail on this shoulder, it's like you have to create the full turnaround, because her 3/4 back
is not going to be the same.
Is not going to be the same on both sides. So just things like that. And then if there's any like special poses that I'd have to create, like if the character is like flying towards the camera or something, and there's a lot of foreshortening, then you would like build.
Explain foreshortening. I'm not an illustrator.
It's like if my face is really close to the camera, and then my feet are like, if I'm like flying towards it, and then my feet are like really tiny kind of thing.
So, but basically like perspective from sort of a camera angle of sorts. Yeah. Okay.
So then you're just sort of, you would have to build that specific view. Basically like anything. Yeah. It's not like you could just take that. It's all like a flat drawing it's like a flat paper doll or something. Right. Yeah. And so like any like specific view, you would need to draw that. Otherwise it's not like you could just take that front and flip it, So, but when you have a 3D thing, you can do all that stuff. But with 2D, it's a slightly different process. So it's a bit more like complicated.
Yeah. So you'd be more of a designer, and then like once you figured out the design for say an episode or a scene or whatever, like it would go on to.
Then it goes to rigging department.
Yeah.
So we would start off the builds where we're sort of setting it up properly. And then the rigging department would then sort of like build the skeletal structure a little bit better. And
the anatomy.
Yeah. And make sure that like everything's rotating on the proper points. Yeah. And that if there's like any clothing and stuff, that's all overlapping properly and built in a way so that like, when the animators are moving it, it's not like kind of messing things up too much,
like clipping objects, for example.
Exactly. Or like you don't want like, because sometimes it was always like anytime there was a character design, normally like when you're, especially in like kids TV, like it's always just like a simple t-shirt or something. You don't want like too many layers on. There's one of the characters, Tim, who had like a jacket and then a button up like polo shirt underneath, and then like a t-shirt or like a flannel and then a t-shirt. And then like, so like rotating him and then doing all the different things. It's like you needed to have all those like separate things and then it would just like that sort of move, get, complicated.
Yeah, they move independently of each other, but they need to move in a way that again looks natural to people. To our eyes.
Thanks for kind of like explaining this. I feel like I'm
laymanizing
it. I know. Because I can like visualize
I know what you're trying to get out. But at the same time, you're thinking much more technically probably than I would think.
I don't know if it's technically. I just
really?
Think, I don't know. I just think like, artistically and like visually. But so then there's the rigging department, and then the animation department then takes those models and then makes it move. And then there's the background department who create like all of the scenes that the characters are acting within. And so then I was also doing a bit of that where it's like, but for backgrounds, instead of like a fun pack artist who's doing the basic sketch, and then I was then building the character. Backgrounds is a layout department who takes the storyboards and figures out what views of this environment do we need. Like, so we have our big establishing shot, or even like, I guess with all these cameras, it's like they would have like a view of this end of the table sketched out, and then like a view of that end, and then a view of like the whole thing together. And then the background painter then gets those like black and white line drawings, and then it's like paint by numbers almost, like, or like not paint by numbers, but like you just get this line drawing and then you're painting everything and then layering it properly so that you can fit in your characters into the scene.
Hmm.
Yeah, the easiest way to explain it is like a stage, or like where you have your background elements, where if we're not moving behind that nice little tea
China
set
cabinet type thing. Yeah.
And so that could all just be flat on one layer.
Gotcha.
But then this would be mid-ground possibly. And so like, and the chairs and the top of the table would be on a separate layer so that we could like sit in and like move these elements around. Yeah. And then if there's anything in the foreground, like if this like cup was like
half obscuring the frame in some capacity.
Yeah. And just sort of like silhouetting things nicely, then like, then
that's its own separate element.
That would be its own,
It seems like such I come from camera production world where it's like, set up the camera and figure out what looks good, now light it. Like there's so much more. I mean, I wonder if this is why, these like Disney Pixar movies and what was the one with the kid with the thoughts, like her different emotions played characters, Disney movie?
Oh yeah. Inside Out.
Thank you. Yeah. Like, I mean, those movies get like 98% on Rotten Tomatoes and are super. And I wonder if that's because with animation, you have to plot everything out.
Yeah.
Like everything. There's no accidents that happen. Like,
well, for sure.
When we're in filmmaking mode, we go out on set and shoot stuff. Like something might happen. Is like, ooh, that ended up good. Like, let's use that. You don't get that option in animation. Like everything is storyboarded. Everything is scripted. They have these animatics that play through. They get the voice acting done long before animation ever happens. Like, do you think that contributes at all to just like the quality of storytelling? And
definitely. And also it's like, with the storyboard, it's like you can figure out the entire movie before you even have to like animate it. And you can make things like visually like pop and look a lot prettier when you're doing all the animation and effects and stuff. But it's like you're figuring out how like the beats of everything and how like the emotions can kind of play out. And then it's like if the acting of the character isn't good enough, then you'll edit that and make it a bit more
amp it up or something, or
amp it up to like to sell that scene a bit more. It's like possibly. I'm not like, it doesn't mean that they're always like better movies. It's like it's its own thing, but generally like the quality, like you rarely go to see like there's obviously the animated movies that are just to sell kids a product, but like, for the most part, they're still like a good movie. And
before you started working, like, how did you get hooked up with that studio? Like, getting a job in, or before that actually, like, how many people did it, like, was it just your studio working on Magic School Bus, or did it have to go to like whatever other shows you were working on, or did they go to other studios? Like, was there like, what was sort of that process? If you're
well, with that show, it was just within our studio for the most part. Like, at least as far as I'm aware, in TV animation, it's all like they don't really outsource much.
Okay.
I think that happens mostly with like visual effects.
Yes, visual effects goes all over the place.
Yeah.
They'll have like 6 or 7 studios working on one movie because the amount of render time it takes and design time and everything. But
whereas like in animation, I think it's mostly like all produced within the studio. But there's like, so most studios, there's like some small ones that just do commercials, and I think they can be around like 20 people, and they're all sort of like hopping around in different departments and stuff. And then but our studio is like one of the bigger ones and had like a couple hundred to like 300 in Toronto.
Wow.
But for the most part, it's all
pretty self-contained.
Yeah,
because I think visual artists or visual effects and whatnot, like CGI and stuff, it gets farmed out to like 6 or 7 companies because there's just so much to do. And like, I guess I don't know how long it takes to render out a single frame of animation of like a more 2D based style thing, but I don't know actually, about that either, as far as like the rendering time goes. Well, because I
was always like
design,
on the front
right?
end of things, So like I would always just sort of that, oh, this is cool.
Hand it off.
And if they like needed revisions, it comes back like a couple weeks or like a month later, and you're like, all right, sure. But for the most part, it's just like.
So how did you get there though? Like, how did you get that gig? Was it just like applied? Did somebody know you? Like, what was the?
No, that one was just applying, but I feel like that has not worked out like since, like anytime. I don't know, like it seems, and just through people that I talk to, it seems for the most part, it's always like, you know somebody at the studio or something like that can kind of like give you
vouch for you or get you an in.
I know. Yeah. But that one, like, luckily the director who was on like the first show that I worked on just like really liked my portfolio and yeah, got me in there.
Like, was it just school blank, like applicant, like they were looking for people and you applied, or?
Yeah. Okay, so like
cool.
After I graduated college, I knew that because I had done an internship at an animation studio while I was still at college, and kind of felt that would be my first move because like, yeah, I just wanted to be working as an artist. And then like, I don't know. Yeah, that's like a whole other thing where it's it's not like my parents or anyone put any like pressure on me, but it's like my own insecurity where it's like, I want to be able to be like, I have a job doing this and it's a legitimate thing. And so like,
it's like a defense mechanism. It's like, look, I have a job. I have a real job. Yeah. Promise.
Oh my gosh. It's so weird. Like, and then I find like most of the time I'm just like at any party or social event, it's always like, you're talking to someone in like finance or something. You're like, okay, cool. And then they like get talking about your stuff and you're like, and then like, they're always so excited or jealous and they're like, oh my gosh, you can do that. I'm like, yeah, man. But it's like, I have no idea like what you do either,
Well, I mean, like I said, it's such like, we all have a general idea of what like someone in finance does or a lawyer or whatever. Right. And it's like, okay, yeah, I have an idea of what you do. Yeah. With us, it's like most people's ideas of animation or filmmaking or just like art in general is like a fun career. Yeah. Where realistically, most of the time it's less hunched over, like
for sure. And they don't,
or going like this. Like,
yeah. And they don't really realize like all the skills and things that are required like to get to that point. And the amount of like training and like staying on top of your skills and everything. And like, I know it does suck, but at the same time, it's like I kind of like that it's that like little secret.
We get this little,
I was gonna say like dirty little secret, but it's like I don't know. Yeah, it's
people
like,
look at us and we're like, we have fun careers.
Yeah, and then like it is fun. Like anytime you're talking to someone and just sort of see their eyes light up once you like, I work in animation or whatever. Like I'm a working artist. Like it's like just like, oh sweet, now I don't have to talk about like I don't know.
I know. Well,
I don't even know what
I was up at a cottage a couple weeks ago, and there was a guy. He was a vet, like, or worked as a vet tech or in veterinarianism. Yeah. And I was kind of like, we were just having drinks and shooting the shit. I'd never met him before this night, and I was explaining to him like what I do, and it was at a buddy's cottage, and most of us that were there are like filmmakers and went to school, like also went to Sheridan. Yeah. Half of them have been on this podcast now. Nice. And he's like, wow, it's like, you guys are all like working in the arts and you're killing it. And I'm like, well, yeah, but that's because there are a lot more opportunities than people think there are. Right. And also, most of my job is sitting at a computer. Yeah. Like realistically, like it's fun. I like what I do, but it's like, it's not like a glamorous, like. I know.
Well, but I'm sure that like, cause then you'd be thinking of his job. You're like, oh, you're just hanging out with puppies. All day I know.
He's like, well, no, I have to put them down.
Yeah. There's a lot of like shit with that too. I know. It's like any job, there's always going to be the bullshit side of it or whatever, or the part that you don't want to do, but the end product or whatever is always like.
As much as I love what I do, there's some days where I'm just like, oh my fucking God.
Yeah,
like
totally.
This is like whatever project I'm working on is killing me right now or whatever.
Yeah, I know. It was like funny. I didn't really realize starting out like how much time at a computer it is. You know, I thought I could just be a bit more creative and be out in the forest just drawing like trees and then like bring it back and be like, here's my art. Yeah, this is the art. Like I didn't realize that it's just like, no, you're at a computer and you're looking up like forests. Yeah.
Like, well, what amazed me though is that like when we worked on that short optic that ultimately was never finished. Yeah. When you were doing some of the character design work and like we were spitballing like what some of these characters would look like, I totally had seen some of your illustrations before and did not realize they were digital. Like I thought they were like, you know, you would hand drawn them and then And so then you're like sitting there on your Mac, like with a like I think you were using the stylus and I was like watching you do this shit. I'm like, oh my God, this is all digital. This is fucking incredible. I know. Because you're like shading shit and you're like making it look like like it's a hand-drawn illustration. And I was like, this is flabbergasting.
I know. And it's so hard for me to be able to like relate to it on that level, just because I've been like in the digital world for, well, it's not even like it's been that long. I don't know. It's
but I mean,
just
like, because you primarily do digital illustration, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. And it's just hard to explain it. Yeah. It's basically like, because the structure of it is different than a normal drawing, I guess, where like it's all based in layers, and there's different like effects that you can, there's different types of like layers that you can use to create shadows and help like colors pop and those sorts of things. Like it's a lot of like, it's its own kind of beast, but essentially like it's all the same as like just doing a normal painting where you're like, oh, I want to make this, emphasize this part of the painting or something. So I'm going to, you know, darken the surroundings and kind of silhouette it, or, you know, make those colors nice and vibrant and contrasty and whatever. Yeah.
But then you also have to know stuff like color science too, right? Like, have you ever? Really
like it's all like color theory of, just knowing like your complementary colors and what things mix together. And you don't necessarily need, you're not like mixing paint colors in digital art. It's all more just like you have the gradient and you're just picking and selecting whatever. And there's different ways of going about it, but for me, I just select the color. I know the one I want. And if it doesn't work, then you can adjust it and you can
then you can just like click it and be like, I'm just going to make this a little
it's a bunch of sliders.
A little warmer than I originally thought.
Yeah. Oh man, I know. It's just like, I don't even know the first thing to start explaining it to you. Like what? I'm sorry.
No, that's
so what about it like blows your mind that it's like all happening
like that? I mean, that you can, like when you sat down with that like stylus and drawing pad, it was like you're like, my limitations of Photoshop are like, I know how to take a photo and drop it into Lightroom and even it out to roughly where I wanted to, and then flip it into Photoshop and do, you know, little fucking like remove something in the background or like clean up a background or whatever. Like I know how to do that shit. But then I was watching you create, like, I don't even know how to like take the paintbrush tool in Photoshop and do anything with it.
I know.
Like,
I only really think of it as like a painting app.
And to me it's entirely a photo app. Like that's, I don't think.
Well, more so now I use it for like photo manipulating, because it's like I'm combining photos just to get that like extra realism in images. Like I'll use like, so, but I'm still starting with like, there's a paintbrush app or like a paintbrush tool, and you're just drawing like the lines and sort of sketching out your composition or basic idea. And then I start to like block in the general shapes and like colors, and you try to just like sort of work general to specific, and then you block in your major values. And like, so that would be like your lights and your shadows, and make sure that like, if it's sort of working on that simple scale, then you can keep going kind of thing. And if it's not, then you make some adjustments and tweak things. And then, you just like slowly build on it more and more. And it makes it easy with Photoshop because you can just keep adding layers if you wanted to or whatever. And so if something's not working, then you just get rid of that layer and you still have everything underneath it.
Yeah.
And you can always like undo or scale things, or, you know, it just makes things a lot easier. Whereas like with a painting, it's like, you're layering and adding things on as you go. But it's
once
like,
it's applied,
you just have to be much more calculated in your decisions and everything. And I feel like with oil painting or whatever, it's like I spent like at least twice the amount of time while I was working on a painting, just staring at it and being like, and just sort of plotting out my moves and being like, okay, if this is like, if I'm going to add a bit of a bluish hue there, then that's going to be like this. And like, so you're just sort of, whereas in Photoshop, you're just kind of like, you can
experiment more.
Yeah, you can experiment more. And then you can also come up with all these like happy accidents that you never would have thought of on your own. And you just sort of bring something in, or you just make a weird brush stroke and you're like, oh, actually it looks way fucking cooler than what I was anticipating.
Have you done a lot of like physical painting and stuff? Because
not much recently, but that's what, like when I started at Guelph, that's what I was doing. Like it was all oil paintings and whatever. And like, so it was, which is great. Like I think if anything, any like aspiring artist or whatever, like I'm always encouraging them to learn the foundation stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know how far I don't know if you need to go as far as I did with it. Like I spent like 4 years just painting and mixing colors and sculpting with clay and everything.
Yeah.
Whereas all these tools are available now that you can just experiment and do. But it's like just having that tactile like knowledge in it, I think does help. That's at least how I try to justify it to myself.
Well, does it at least force you, like what you said there a second ago is like, I'd spend half the time just staring and plotting. Like to me, I know that's what you do in art. Like as a filmmaker, it's like you try to plan out what you're doing as much as possible when you're going out on site. But it's like, when I look at a painting, I never think that like the artist probably sat there and stared at a blank fucking canvas with a plan.
Yeah.
For a long time before they ever actually like started. Like to me, it's just like, oh, you just like grab a canvas and then you just go. And it's like, of course you don't fucking do that.
Well, no, for sure. But
I
there's
mean, it
also
forces
like,
you to like pre-plan basically.
And you're also doing like thumbnails too, which is just like a basic little sketch of like the composition. And then like you're kind of planning it out beforehand. You still would do that with the digital painting just to sort of speed up the process and whatever. Like you want to plan it out beforehand too. But yeah, like with a painting, or even there's artists that will like do a smaller version of the painting and like just so they can kind of figure out what colors they're mixing and stuff and then just like have that all set. Or there's also guys that don't take that much time looking at it and thinking about it. But like for me, that's what worked. But I think it'd be similar to you. Like if you were to have like filmed on like film and then edited things together, like when you're cut, is that how it worked? Like when it was like
on a steam
film
back and
so it's like it's the same as that. It's just like you have to be way more calculated with that, and you have your happy accidents there. But with digital, it's like you can just undo and be like, oh,
well, I mean that's also like it's funny because it's kind of a bit of a not correlation, but like with film versus digital film, and like painting and illustration versus digital painting and illustration. It was like, we have a finite amount of film on the day. Like, I mean, if you have a big enough budget, you can get as much as you want.
Yeah.
But it's like, we have this roll of film. And when the roll runs out, we need to get a new, so we got to plan our shots accordingly. Where now it's just like, I can grab a digital camera and shoot until the batteries die,
so
and
you
shoot. And
we
it's like,
found the way to explain digital art to you. This is exactly what it is.
It's digital filmmaking.
Exactly.
Just as illustration.
Yeah.
But it still just boggles my mind that it's like you can take Photoshop and create a full image, like a good image from
but
nothing.
it's the same with what you do, man. Like it boggles
I can point a camera at something real and capture that image.
I don't know.
That's just
but even like what you were showing me, like with just like the color adjusting and all these different things and stuff, it's like, I don't know. I figured like you just shoot it and like, more or less it's like what I didn't like, you don't consider all those things. But once you're in it, then you know, you kind of,
But it is, I mean, it's cool because I do use Photoshop, not as much and not to but for totally different purposes. It's like one software that
it's a magical thing.
It is quite magical. Yeah. Although I do like Lightroom more because most of the stuff I take photos and Lightroom is basically photo development.
For sure. I think Lightroom's supposed to be, I haven't messed around with it too much, but I want to get more into photography because I am interested now in a lot of like rendering software, and now that I'm getting into 3D a bit more, like I want to learn a bit more about lenses and all those like focal shifts and all that nonsense, and just kind of like, because so I'll sculpt something in 3D and then you bring it into a rendering program and then like set up your lights and atmosphere and everything, and like the possibilities are kind of endless with what you want. Like most of the stuff I do is like characters and creatures and stuff, but then like I'm gonna be creating more environments and everything too, and it's just like, I don't know. So I feel like I don't know, and also too, I feel you can get so stuck in just like doing the same thing all the time that it's like important to learn new skills, but I want those new skills to kind of like benefit my main thing. You know what I mean? So I feel like photography would be a good outlet.
Well, it kind of like it would force you to look at things a little differently too.
Yeah,
right? Like, but with you bringing that up, like I was gonna ask, what's sort of like the toughest part of what you do? Like, is there? I mean, like I've sat down with actors, I've sat down with directors. Like one of the big things people struggle with is like getting rejected a lot, especially the actors.
Yeah.
Or, you know, the creative frustration where it's like you're working on something and you're not happy with it, which we talked a little bit about.
Yeah,
but like,
for sure.
I mean, what sort of like struggles do you go through doing what you do? Like,
yeah, I'd say like, yeah, it's like similar to them. I feel like it's entirely emotional, like the emotional end of things, like just wanting to be better or striving to like, because then, yeah, you go on to sites like ArtStation or even Instagram and then see all the stuff that people are doing. Man, fuck. Like that's like leagues ahead of what I'm creating. And then I like, you know, and then it's also just like, yeah, trying to stay ahead of things because there's all these like new tools coming out too that, and like a lot of people will talk like not to get caught up in learning all the new software and stuff and just sort of like, you know, honing your skills and focusing on that.
I kind of disagree.
Yeah.
Like
I'm a bit of like, I feel like you need to be a bit of both. Otherwise, if you like hold this like line and you're just like, no, I'm sticking my post in the ground or whatever the saying is. I'm not finding it right now. But you know, then eventually like 5 years from now, the industry is going to be like in an entirely different place.
I mean, like, but look at like, you know, illustration and television, like cartoon television development.
Yeah.
From The Simpsons, from how it started to like that process is totally different. And you need to hone your skills, but you need to also stay up to date
because that's all within someone's lifetime. Like someone
that's
working
barely
on,
that's someone's just like teenagehood.
I know, or I mean like working career. It's like someone working on the original Simpsons could very well be and probably is working on the Simpsons like currently, you know,
but
and it's
totally
like,
different process.
Yeah, it's exactly. Like it's like they've seen like it change entirely.
Yeah, because and I mean like I would say, you know, you like as an editor, for example, you should know multiple softwares, know how to execute what you want in different tools, because if a job comes along that requires you to do something with a certain tool because that's what the client has or whatever, like if you want to open up that revenue stream and keep pursuing that sort of like creative passion to make a career out of it, you got to know how to fucking do it.
Yeah. How often do you set aside time to learn something new? Like
less than I should.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. But like right now I'm trying to also learn a bit more about 3D visual effects. Like there's a free software, like freeware called Blender that I'm starting to peruse through.
For sure. Yeah.
But it's not even just that. Like, I mean, I think it's good to just force yourself to learn new shit.
Totally.
In general.
I know, but then it's like it's just like a fine balance, right? Because then you could also just be like spreading yourself too thin and like trying to like dabble in a bit of everything, and then you're not creating like you're just doing like beginner tutorials on every software, and then in the span of a year or however many months you don't really have any like solid pieces to show for it with that. But I guess for me, the most important thing is like having some like good looking final images. Whereas I guess like, would you need to like in your line of work, like would you need to like show that you can do this sort of thing to then like do it on a new project, or is it like
I mean, I don't know if you need to get that specific. Yeah. Like most of the work I get is similar to you through word of mouth. Somebody knows me and has referred me to somebody else. Or they've referred me and that person has checked out my website or my portfolio, and they look through and be like, okay, he knows how to produce a finished piece. Yeah. Because I mean, like, if there's something very specific that a client might need and I don't know how to do it. Yeah. If it's something I think I can learn, I might bullshit and just be like, yeah, no problem. And then furiously Google a YouTube tutorial. But if it's something totally outside of my realm of ability, and I know like, that, hire somebody else I'm gonna be like, we need money to hire somebody. Yeah, because I'm like, kind
of the same way.
It's not everyone can be a one man band. Yeah,
like, and a lot of the time, like, the work that you have out there, like, I'm sure they're coming to you to like do something similar to the like work you have on your site, and like, this is kind of. It's like obviously, you know, like, it's not like they're gonna see your stuff and be like, "Hey, can you do a bunch of like visual effects for us?" And like,
but I mean, I'd take it and I'd hire somebody and look, I got it done. It just wasn't me. Yeah, but also because I operate a bit as a like producer in that, like, if you bring a project to me, like I can hire the team and I can make it happen. It's depending on the job. It's not necessarily just me. Like, you know, we get a big project, like a commercial project. It's like, well, I need a team. And that's where a bit like, I mean, working in animation and design for like a television series is a little, it's much more collaborative, right? Like, than self-directed sort of illustration.
but the stuff, the illustration stuff that I'm doing now, it's like, I'm kind
You're
of
alone.
like envious of that, because it's like, it's
but
pretty
still,
much just
most
like
of the time I'm still alone, like just editing, right? Like,
I know. But it's never like a team working on the thing. It's kind of just like me and the client, and then like the back and forth of just like, make just this. And it's like, okay,
What sort of revisions and stuff do you get from clients though on these like illustrations? Like how picky can they be?
Well, normally like,
not picky, but like,
well, it depends.
Specific.
It depends on like who it is. And if they have like a very clear vision, a lot of the time they come to you just because they like what you create, and they just like have faith in you but it's like, I normally try to send them the early sketches of just like, here's the basic composition, or like, here's what I'm thinking for it. And they'll have a written idea of what they want. And then I try to like do as close to that as possible, but then also like throw in some of my own ideas.
Yeah.
And then, like, then I'll do like a more like finished color thing, and then send that to them. And then there'll be like the final. And then a lot of the times on the final, it's like, oh, maybe like darken that, or like, can we like shrink the size of this thing or whatever. And like, normally they're not too bad, but there are times where it's, I know, but there have been times where it's like, thinking of a different direction for things. And like, but you just have to account for
after you've spent like a week on the thing already.
Sure. It happens, but it's fine.
Then you bill for that. Like,
sure.
You know, a different direction.
Sure.
I need another week.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And sometimes like you kind of agree to things up front and be like, this is like, this price will include all revisions and stuff. And like, you just sort of have faith that they're not going to be like, and there's ways of protecting yourself from that for sure. But like, again, a lot of the things can be
contracts.
Yeah, for sure. But then like some of it can be a bit more like casual and word of mouthy or whatever. Or like, now that I'm further along in things, it's more professional.
But I mean, like, do you sort of set that precedent with a client as to like, do you operate on hourly rates with clients, or is it day rates, or is it just like flat project rates under certain parameters?
It depends. Like normally it depends on like what they go for. Like if they're just approaching me to do a thing and like asking me for a quote, then like, I go hourly, and then I'll be like, and it's also based on like the amount of time worked, as well as like what they're using it for, like
licensing,
their usage, and like the rights that they want with it. Like, cause sometimes if like, they're only using it for this like one print run, and then afterwards it's yours to like use for whatever, then like, you wouldn't charge as much as like if they were just doing like
national campaign.
And then it's like, we own this image for forever.
Propriety or in perpetuity.
Yeah. Which like for the most part, that doesn't bother me, because it's like, I like to just constantly be creating new things, and I would never be like, oh, I kind of did a similar job earlier. Let's just use this, and I'll change the look of someone. Like I'll change the face on the guy, and you got a new image. It's like, I don't want to do that. I want to like,
you want to tailor it to,
at least right now. But like,
maybe not when you're like a jaded old guy and you're like, fuck.
But like for me, the most important thing is just being able to like always retain like authorship of the image. It's like, I'll always be credited as the illustrator or whatever. And then I want to be able to use it on my site and for like social media and whatever, and like be able to like promote with it and use it to apply for like other jobs. And then, like just have it on like my sites. Is like, is
use
all
it,
I really
be able to
care
use
about.
it as a self-promotion thing too.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you bring up like licensing and stuff too, because I feel like
I shouldn't have, because I don't really know a lot about it.
Well, not that we have to get into like the specifics of it, but I think that's something that most people should like realize, not necessarily like licensing, but when you're being hired by a client who is, this is more freelance world, because when you're like, you're employed by a studio or something, like it's the studio doing it, and you're just, you're a hired gun on a salary or whatever. But like, if a client is hiring you to design something that's going to be used in, say, like a national campaign across the country, like target reach of millions, perhaps, that licensed image is now worth way more than the license for like a small mom and pop shop that's going to use it in their their front door.
Yeah, for
like,
sure. And you got to take all those.
And that's one thing that, yeah, like when people are setting rates and figuring out how to quote a project is like, you need to know those things, because if you're just working for like an hourly rate and that's what you do, like you're kind of being taken advantage of if they're going to use this as a massive, like, because the whole point is like, we're going to use this on our marketing material. It's going to be seen by millions of people in an attempt to get them to buy something.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I know. And like, and it's just one of those things that you just get better with time. Yeah. And most of the time you're not going to get those big like corporate gigs, like just starting out, and you sort of start out with like smaller things. And then like, it's always, just sort of mom and pop shops. And then I did like a can for a brewery or whatever. And then like, so it sort of like grows as you age and get a bit more comfortable with like asking for a certain price. Yeah. And whatever.
Going back a little bit though, how you went to school for like science for a bit, or was it like,
it was an arts and science degree,
arts and science,
the University of Guelph. Yeah. Because at the time it's like I just was graduating high school, and
but was that like a degree program, like a degree of arts and sciences? Like, does it fall under fine arts, or is it like Bachelor of Arts? Like what?
No, it's a BAS.
BAS.
So Bachelor of Arts and Science. Yeah, I know. It was the first kind of, or one of the first of its kind. I think like most universities have them now. Okay. Because it's the same as like, I don't know, just like there's like, isn't there like just general degrees or something?
Yeah,
like
I went to Ryerson for 1 year before dropping out, and I was in it was called like undeclared arts. Yeah, and it was a Bachelor of Arts, but then you'd like figure out a focus. It was basically like first year. Yeah. And you were like, I don't know what I'm getting a bachelor's in. I'm going to take a bunch of classes and decide next year.
Right. And then like, so this is just like, you have your two specializations, like one science focus and then one arts focus. And then there were these arts and science classes as well that kind of just talked about more like social issues and like sort of combined the two fields of like where they sort of collide, where like, and those were seriously like the most useful classes I've like ever taken. Just in a general sense of like understanding the world. It's just sort of like, where like scientific research meets entertainment or like media. And it's like the types of things that get funded, and then like versus like, is that like a sellable like newspaper headline or something like that, or, or like what's like a juicy topic to research as opposed to just like if you're, but like that was like really interesting to consider. And then like just like scientific journalism and like how they can sort of distill that information sometimes. And then it like,
but it's interesting how sciences and arts are like linked closely enough to get a degree in Bachelors of Arts and Sciences. Yeah. Like, I mean, most people, I guess it kind of makes sense. Like you were talking about all this anatomy stuff, like how closely linked you have to know the science of the world of sorts to generate like a proper artistic representation.
Like, because that was like my idea going into it was like, it's like, it was just dumb. But I like needed to get like a university degree, but at like the way I justified it, I was like, I'm going to do scientific illustrations. Yeah. So then it was like, I took a lot of anatomy and zoology classes where I was dissecting like minks and sharks and shit like that. And then you're just sort of, and then I was also like drawing for the classes and then being like, here's what a shark liver looks like and stuff. And I just figured like, that's what I would do.
So you went to university, like, was that just like, I've had this conversation a couple times where people think like, going out of high school, it's like they felt like they needed to go to university. Like it was like hammered into their head. It's like, go to university and get an education. Yeah. Which I think is important. But is that like, do you think it was just this like internal, if you don't go to university, you're stupid and you're going to work in the trades and like which is totally not true anymore.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Like, was that just like your own sort of like expectations of yourself? Is like, I see university as a success.
Yeah, for sure. And I've always been like a high achiever kind of thing. Like I was valedictorian. And or like it's like I would just like always get good grades, and I was always like school focused and driven. And then it's just like I don't even think I really thought of another option like that. I wasn't going to university. It was just like, I'm gonna do this. And then I applied to OCAD. I think it was like one art college. But
which is the Ontario College of Arts and Design.
Art and Design, yeah. And I either messed up that application or they just didn't want me. I don't know what happened, but like I never like got even like to the next round of like interviews there. I pretty much like, I think, and then I didn't do the greatest application for McMaster either. And so it was like, by like process of elimination, just like had Guelph, but like I had the best time there, and like you grow so much in those years. And yeah, just like as a personal thing, like I think that was like such a great experience.
Yeah.
And I don't think I realized it at the time, but a lot of the foundation art skills were like really handy to have in my like tool belt kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I felt the same way because I was under the impression that it's like, if you don't go to university, and this is hammered to me by the Ontario school system, was like, I was similar. I was I wanted to get good grades all through high school.
Yeah.
I was not valedictorian, but
what a loser.
I mean, in grade 12, I took all courses that I liked and like kind of laughably were like the easy classes. Cause like my grade 12 year was like drama, music, writer's craft. I took French, and I took a college level science. But it was like, I always wanted good grades. And then when I finished school, like high school, I was not ready to start in the working world. Like one, I wanted to be a filmmaker, but I had no idea what that actually meant. But I was like 18 years old and not ready to like go just try to make a career for myself. Like I felt like I needed school.
Yeah.
And I initially tried to get into Ryerson because it was a university. And I was like, university is for smart people. And I'm a smart person, so I better go there because if I don't, I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
Before dropping out and just being like, why the fuck am I doing that? I'll go to Sheridan.
Okay. Yeah. But I know it's like, you still sort of want that like security blanket of like, I'm still like, you know, I'm still safe in this school before I enter into the real world or whatever.
But now, I mean, no one has ever, I don't have a degree. I have an advanced diploma. Yeah. No one has ever asked for my diploma. No one's asked for my fucking resume in like
but it's
7
like,
years.
I don't know that I would have been able to figure it out had I not gone through.
Sure.
Even at like college, they did a great job of sort of like explaining, because like all the stuff that I understand about business and like contracts and everything was in our business courses in the illustration program.
Interesting, because I didn't like, we had a business and film and television course and I don't remember anything from that. It was way more about like grants and financing films and everything.
Okay, yeah.
Where it's like, you should have been teaching us how to incorporate a company and
quote for a job.
Figure out what are the like industry rates, like what can you make as a freelance, what are the benefits of freelance versus like we didn't do any of that shit.
So much, and it's not like
everything I learned about business I did from Google after I graduated.
I know that's what sucks, and it's also just like trial and error. You just sort of like figure it out as you go, kind of thing, and you make the mistakes. But there was a certain extent to that, but they did have like a very good business like class for the illustration program. I'm not sure what that program looks like now. Yeah, but that was extremely useful, and I have heard that from a lot of people that like, it's like, man, I wish I had that. And they did a good job there for sure.
Lucky.
Yeah, I know, but it's not like I was like, oh man, I'm set. Like now, this shit's a breeze because I did so many tests on like what a contract should look like. No, but like it definitely was like useful to start getting yourself in that mindset for sure.
Yeah, well, to treat it like a business, basically. To treat it like, you know, as much as it's I want to do art and as it's a creative passion, like you got to know how to make it business. You know,
this is your product.
Yeah,
and
how do I make money off of this so that I can pay my bills?
How do I advertise myself and like all the costs that go into each, and yeah.
So before that though, like what led to was it just always like a general interest in art? Basically, that led to, because I mean, like Michelle, your sister, went to film school with me. What does your other brother do?
Oh, he's not an artist at all, but he is a very talented drawer. Like, he's like Jane Goodall, basically. He's all like right now is currently in the Congo. Oh shit, with like the gorillas and like.
Is he the oldest?
Yeah, he's the oldest.
And I'm the middle, and then Michelle's the youngest. Okay,
but he just works in like environmental like stuff. I can't really explain it.
I mean, sometimes it sounds more important than what I do, but
yeah, no, for sure. And he does write like articles and things for the Jane Goodall Foundation. And
Cool.
Yeah. So he's like very much about like saving the gorillas in Africa.
Yeah.
Is his like thing.
Good for him.
But like where it started, like for me, it was mostly just like my dad was an artist as well. Like he's not like professionally, but was always like drawing,
like a
stuff.
hobbyist, hobby artist.
And then there was a point in time where he wanted to make a go at it, but I guess like just needed something a little bit more stable, and like his parents encouraged him into the science direction or whatever. But so like for me, it was like once he saw that I was interested in it, like was fully supportive of it. But
do you think that's why? Like that's partially why? Because again, some parents would be very skeptical about their kids going into the arts, but because he had that sort of passion previously, okay.
And I don't know that I would have had the confidence to like defy my parents and be like, screw you guys. Like I've just been like a very like good boy, like obeyed the rules, did good in school. Like it's just like, you know, I don't know, but they've been very just like laid back about it.
What does your mom do?
Like, she's a teacher and then was a principal and then now is retired. And like, but like they were, like always, even like when I would get good grades, I'm like, my friends like get money for their, like the amount of A's that they get on their report card.
My parents
like,
never gave me money.
And then they're like, well, we don't give a shit what you get on your report card. Like,
do the best. Eat shit, son.
I know. So, but yeah, like my dad was always like bringing us home pads of paper.
Yeah.
And then like my brother and I would just be like on the floor, just like, you know, those like old, like printer papers that would like have that like, little holes. And, like,
the little like rip or
with
the
like tear.
Yeah. The
like,
what's that? A perforated,
perforated.
like edges.
Man, I can't think of any word, but like, like, so it was like, we would just have like stacks of that shit.
Yeah.
And then we'd be drawing on the floor like all the time. And like, so it's like, I don't remember a time that I wasn't drawing.
Cool.
And then kind of maybe lost it a bit in high school once I was like, oh, girls are cool and like, and whatever. But then ironically,
you could probably have landed like more girls
if I was like a cool artist.
Being a cool artist.
I know. Yeah, it's weird.
Girl,
like a lot of my high school friends don't really, or like until now seeing stuff on social media, they're like, I didn't know you used to draw. I'm like, yeah, dude, like all the time. But I don't know. I wasn't like the art kid in high school. Yeah. I don't know. But yeah, it's just like always been the thing. And a lot of it was to like, cause my brother was very talented, like a lot more so than I was. And I think like most child prodigies or anyone who's like really good at what they do either had like an older brother who was like a little bit better than them. Like, and that's what like forced them to get that much.
Are you saying
better
you're a child prodigy?
That's basically what I'm saying. I don't know if you like you can say it already. No, but it, like I just mean like I don't know, any like musician or like someone who's like super talented, like
they were like striving to
whatever. It's just like always like trying to compete with their older brother, I feel like, or something along those lines, or had like a parent or some sort of mentor that could, like, you know, isn't that a thing? That's like there's some
I don't know. I mean, maybe, I don't know. I try to be the best, but I'm the oldest kid and I don't.
Yeah. How many siblings?
I have 2 siblings. I have a younger brother and a younger sister.
What do they
do? My sister's an actress and is at Sheridan. She went to Humber for acting and is also at Sheridan now doing makeup for film and television.
Sick.
And my brother is he's a writer, but he's not working as a writer. He works at like a tech company, but he's super talented writer and one of the fucking funniest people. Like when I'm hanging out with him, he's usually like I'm in stitches. Like he is the funniest dude ever, and he's like wickedly creative. He has a degree in philosophy. And so like hyper intelligent. Like way more book smart than I could ever be. And I used to think that I was like the smart one of us. So I'm kind of competing with my younger brother.
Right. Yeah. Just to be like, no, I'm older.
I'm the older, smarter one.
Yeah.
So it's weird because like I went into filmmaking. My brother focused on philosophy and writing, and my sister went into like acting, but neither of my parents were really in creative fields. My dad's like he has a I think he majored in physics.
Oh God. Okay.
And he works as like a programmer for a lottery development company. And my mom, she did like some background like acting and tried to and like singing back when she was like in her early 20s, but never really like followed through with it. And she had a bunch of kids that fucked up her life for 20 years.
but like growing up, was like movies and like film like a big thing in the household? Or like,
for me, it was. Yeah. Yes. Like they kind of joke because like they could shut me up for 2 hours by plopping me in front of a movie.
Yeah.
Where my younger brother, Matt, would not pay attention at all. He'd just wander off and start like lighting fires or something. But yeah, I've always been obsessed with films. Like I watched.
Parents wouldn't like they weren't into like they wouldn't sit down and watch the movies with you or anything. It was just like all on your own.
I don't remember. Not really. No, I don't think so. Like I mean, maybe some of them, but a lot of times, like because I was a stupid kid and I'd get obsessed with a movie and I'd like it would end and then I'd like rewind the VHS and start it over again and watch it again.
Yeah.
Like. We watched Ace Ventura recently and like just it was on and I could still recite that movie. It also made me realize that I shouldn't have been watching that when I was like 5 years old because it's like so way dirtier than I thought it was.
Very Ace Ventura shirt today. This is fitting.
Yeah.
This is good.
But yeah, I was always totally obsessed with movies and then like later got into television.
Were your friends into it though?
Not really. No, not my high school buddies.
It's so funny
that and I'm still friends with a lot of my high school buddies, and some of them went into creative fields. Like Scott Law is a voice actor, so I knew him from high school. We did like plays together, like we were in the drama class together and whatnot.
Yeah.
But and I played in a band throughout high school, so that was sort of where I think I got into filmmaking and sort of like creative production process because we went into recording studios.
Yeah.
And it was like we went into a studio for 3 days and like, tracked the drums.
So you still had creative friends?
I was very in the creative field. And like my other buddy went into like graphic design for a while and now is in like UX and UI design.
Oh man, there's a lot of work in that.
So yeah, a lot of us like, and we're all like, a lot of us still hang out regularly, which is weird for people that finished school together like more than a decade ago.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so it was no one was really into filmmaking necessarily, but we were all like very into drama. Like almost all of us were in the drama program. And so like I had a lot of creative friends because there was basically the creative nerds at our school and then like the soccer nerds. That was like how there's a big soccer thing at our school. Those were
what school is this?
There's some Catholic high school in Mississauga.
Oh my gosh.
But that was how it was like our year was kind of like we were all
the soccer kids like the cool jocks or something.
I mean, I think they thought they were the cool jocks, and I was like, those kids are the cool kids, and we're the like weird art nerds. But we're cool with that. That's fine.
Yeah. Man, no, that's interesting though, because like for me, it's like we've just like always been into movies, and like we'll watch the special features or the behind the scenes.
Yeah, and I would do that too.
I know, but like I'm just surprised that like no one else. You were just doing that alone.
Yeah. Basically, as far as I think so.
I don't know. I feel like that's what got me so interested in it was because it's like my dad and older brother were doing it, and they like, and then so this is my
dad
way of like
traveled a lot. Like when I was a kid, my dad.
Am I worthy yet?
Dad, did I do a good job?
Did I do a good job?
No, but my dad would travel a lot too, right? Like his job when in the early 90s when I was a kid, he would have to like go to Singapore for like 3 weeks.
Oh, okay.
And so it would be like my mom with me and my brother, and then later my sister.
I see. Yeah.
So it was, I think, like a lot of the time getting me into like movies or my like love of movies and like being able to lock down. Like they were just like, busy, and it was like they needed to just distract us. And I mean, it's not as bad. Like nowadays, it's like a lot of people be like, "Well, I don't let my kids watch TV until they're like 8." Right. But it's also, or play with screens rather is the thing now.
Well, I was gonna say, isn't it funny like how I remember us growing up, it was always like so important on like the distance you were away from the television screen.
I know. Now
like
I got a VR headset and the screen is literally in front of my eyeballs.
And then now it's just like about screen time with kids. But then like back in the day, for whatever reason, it was like how close you were to the TV was just so bad.
Yeah, it was,
and the amount of time you're watching TV. But.
Yeah, but I mean, at least now, I think the problem is with kids now and screen time is that I am equipped with a screen in my fucking pocket now, and it's an interactive device, and it can I'm addicted to my phone.
Oh,
like,
for sure.
and I hate it. I hate it so much. And I can totally see why it's like you do not want like your 5-year-olds playing with an iPad.
It's horrifying when you see like how like easily they can just like
they're like sitting on Instagram and they're like 6 years old. It's like, yo, kid, there's a real world out here.
I know. And I'm like, it also took me like 3 years to figure out how to do that on Instagram.
I also didn't get my
how do you know how to
I didn't
do
get
this?
my first cell phone until I was like 15 or 16.
Yeah,
and it was like a little flip phone, like Motorola, and it had, Snake maybe.
I had like the chocolate, I think.
Yeah, but that was our abilities with screens was either like watch movies and TV or play video games. But video games were, again, self-contained to that console. You weren't online playing with some kid in like Texas who's cussing racial slurs at you.
Right.
Yeah, like, I mean, even that was 20 years ago. How different the landscape is for media consumption.
Yeah.
Which also means there's more jobs for people in media consumption.
Sure. I know, it's great. Yeah. Like, hell, bring it on.
Yeah.
But what do you do for like your phone addiction though? Like, do you try because for me, I'll be like, I will check it once an hour.
Oh, really?
Is my thing.
Oh, so
and I try to like do my best to like stay disciplined on that. And like
that's interesting. No, see, I don't really have something, and I want to.
Yeah.
What I have done lately is I actually like, because of my web, television, social media like addiction of sorts, is I used to stay up really late. Like I would, and like back in college, I'd be working on projects till like 2 or 3 in the morning. And I was doing that up until very recent, like within the last year. I was still like up at 2 a.m. and I was like, oh, I'm working. But then I realized most of the time I was just on Reddit.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd be like just perusing Reddit until 2 in the morning. And then I was like, this is fucking stupid. Why am I still up? I'm not working. I'm not being productive right now. So I actually like started basically cutting myself off from at least my computer at 11 o'clock, unless I'm working, like I'm actually working on something. Yeah. Or I'm like, actually doing something creative. Like I've worked on these podcast episodes late at night, but to me, that's work. I'm not just fucking perusing Reddit or YouTube. And I've started going to bed earlier. I'm usually in bed by midnight.
What time are you waking up at?
7:30.
Oh,
and I used to wake up at like 9 o'clock. Like I'd wake up at 9 and start working at like 10. Now I'm generally waking up between 7:30 and 8, and I basically start working right away. And then that way I can cut myself off from client work a little bit earlier in the day and work on my own stuff for a little bit and these podcasts and shit.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm way more productive.
Yeah. I love talking about this, like how people structure their days, because it's like such a fascinating thing to me. Like, it's like my main thing, and like what I like pride myself in is like my structure.
Your structure, yeah. Well, because you said that you work on client stuff initially, like you split your time basically half.
Yeah.
Right?
So when I was working at the animation studio,
yeah,
I was also like, this is when I was learning all the 3D software and the anatomy things. So I would, I wake up at 5:30 every day, or like 5:20 every day.
Oh my God.
And then I worked for an hour, and then I would go to the gym, which was near my work, and then like just to get that like exercise in, because that's extremely important when we're like sitting down at a desk all day,
see, that's something I don't do enough. But
well, you climb though, no?
Yes, but not as much as I should.
Oh,
and
man,
like
you gotta force yourself to do it at least 5 days a week.
Oh my God,
4 to 5 days a week.
You know what I've been doing in very recently though? Instead, I was running for a while over the summer.
Yeah.
Like I'd go.
Oh, that's the best.
I trained up to do 5K.
Yeah.
Did it and then just stopped running.
Okay. Yeah.
But lately I've been playing VR and I've been doing Beat Saber.
On
my PlayStation.
Yeah, you wake up a sweat too.
Yes, you do. Like I basically like I've like a half hour to 45-minute routine now where it's like I just blast through songs on the faster speed on like hard, and I am sweating.
Is that
like
what Beats? I don't even know what Beat Saber is. It's like, are you just slashing? Like,
yeah,
it's
you
like
have like 2 lightsabers.
Like,
yes, you have 2 lightsabers and cubes are flying at you. You want to give it a whirl after? I have it.
Sure. But yeah, you just got to add some weights to those, and then yeah. But like, and then I would work my day at the studio, then come home, have dinner, like wash up, make my lunch for the next day, and then spend like those last 3 hours from like 7 to yeah, 7 to 10, I would work on my stuff and then go to bed. So I still like 10 to 5:30. What's that? That's like 7.5 hours. It's still the same amount of time. But like for me, I was always like that. I'm like from 10 o'clock onwards, I'm not doing anything productive. As much as I think I'm like sitting here doing the thing, I'm not like as efficient in those hours. And then I'm like just getting distracted and whatever. So it's like, whereas in the morning when you're up before everyone's awake and it's just like quiet and still, and it's just your time to be alone and like fucking do the thing you want to do.
But that's why I liked nighttime originally to work because clients wouldn't be bothering me. Because most of my clients would be wrapped up their day by like 4:30 or 5.
Right.
That way it was like, all right, no one's going to bother me. I can work on my own stuff at night. And I would and still do sometimes.
I don't know. I just like...
But I'm much less... I don't like this... I don't like having a very stringent like hourly schedule. That's just me. I just... That's why I'm like, I don't want a job. I never want a full-time job ever again.
No, I'm getting more into it. Like now that I'm like freelancing more now, it's like now I'm a bit more like, okay, once I start to like, I'll just sort of work on this thing. And then once I start to lose focus, then I'll go like shift to something else or whatever. I'm not like, these are the hours I do this task anymore. Whereas like when it was built around the animation like job, then the day like job. I had to be a bit more structured with like how I got that time in or whatever. Whereas like you can be more flexible now, but I still wake up at the same time.
You're up at 5:20 every morning. Oh man,
5:20 every morning. But it's like
you're up earlier than my grandmother.
I know, but I'm also in bed at the same time as your grandmother.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like I don't know. I just love the mornings. I need that time, and because it's just like a fresh start on the day.
Yeah.
And
that's very interesting. I've like been tempted to like give that a whirl and just like for a week wake up at 5. Like I'm amazed that most mornings I'm getting out of bed at 7:30 to 7:45.
Yeah, that's still a good time.
Like most of the time it's like if like when I was on set last week for this Boston Pizza commercial I was doing, I had a call time of 6 a.m. in North York. So I was up at like 4:45 that morning because I'm out in Burlington. I got to drive. Even, like there's not really much traffic. It was like but still a 45-minute drive
for sure. And you have to be like ready for the day.
Yeah, like you're ready to go.
Yeah.
But like if I have to wake up at that time for a specific purpose for a shoot, no problem. Like 4:45 a.m. Even if I went to bed at midnight and I've slept for 4.5 hours, I will be up and I will be able to tackle the whole day, no problem. But when I'm working at home on my edits and stuff, I don't have as much like.
No, it makes sense. And you just like
it's like I know I have to do this today, but it also like it doesn't matter if I start 15 minutes later than what I planned on.
Like, I know. I'm just like very tough on myself. And
okay.
You piece of shit. You wake up and like you do this thing now, work, even if you're not feeling it. Just go. Yeah, I know it's bad. It's just like constant.
Are you tough? Like, are you tough on yourself in all those regards though?
Everything,
like,
yeah. Always.
Is that like an artist thing? Like, do we all just hate ourselves a lot?
Even in like social scenarios, or even after this podcast is done, I'm just gonna be like going through like what I said, and I'm like, oh man. I sound like such an idiot. Or like, like I'm not cool.
The wonder of editing.
I know, yeah. Make me look cool.
I will do my best.
And as smart as possible.
Okay. I'll be on that.
That's a good way to end it.
Sure. Yeah.
Or was there anything else?
No, I think that's good. I mean, it's cool because I haven't sat down with someone who's doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like I've had a couple talks with cinematographers and like lots of film business people, a few actors.
Yeah.
And that's where it's like, I'm trying to get a variety and like see how people are pursuing other creative, especially careers that just not everybody, like,
for sure.
When you're in school, it's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like,
I know, but did they have like
doctor,
a good, did they have like a good, like, here's the, like, what you need to do in order to get this job? Okay.
Not entirely.
Yeah. Like, because I feel like everyone just sort of figures it out their own way.
It is.
I wish I like had those answers, but at the same time, it's just like, just kind of keep doing it and figure it out. Like,
everybody's kind of contributed a tip or a thought or like, here's what I did. And like, this is what worked for me, but like, who knows? Like I've had some people that we met in college and they went to film school and they're like, don't go. Mm-hmm. And then some people who were like, no, that was a great, valuable time. You should go. Like, and it's just getting this kind of wide variety of people doing different things with their careers and like seeing how they got there, especially with us being in our like mid to late 20s, early 30s. Like we're still like babies in our careers. We got lots of time ahead of us.
I just don't feel that way at all. Like I feel like there's so many people that are like younger than me that are like so much more accomplished or whatever.
Yeah, but those are the anomalies.
Those are the what was I saying earlier? Those are like the prodigies, or whatever. Yeah, those are the kids with the.
Well, it's like, I mean, now
more
it's like
talented older brothers.
Are you are you like a sports fan or at all? Yeah, okay, me neither. But I just know about.
Let's talk about sports anyways.
No, but it's just that, like, you know, I look at these NHL players now, and all of them are like 10 years younger than me. Yeah. Like, and or like now it's like when a new movie's coming out with some like big star in it, and then I like Wikipedia them, and they're like, they're 5 years younger than me, and they're a huge like. But
Margot Robbie's like 26.
Margot Robbie is like a week or like 2 months younger than me. Like
it's not fair.
It's
again, crazy. Like, but I thought she was like, because she's like super talented and just looks older too. I had no idea. Anyways.
She's the anomaly. For every one Margot Robbie, for every one Xavier Dolan, for example, is a filmmaker who's like from Quebec. Mm-hmm. He's like 30 and has done like 4 feature films. They've all been in like TIFF.
Yeah.
For every one of those, there's 1,000 of us that who are doing it
the normal way.
Well, not even the normal way. I don't think like what a lot of us do is, at least in the mainstream culture, considered normal.
Yeah.
But we're doing it and we're succeeding. And then there's the people that want to do that but have no idea how, and that's an even greater number. Like, but it's like you like, I straight up, I've compared myself to Margot Robbie. She's much better looking than me. And like so successful, working on these multi-million-dollar films as a producer and an actor, and it's like she's younger than me. And it's hard not to be like, why what did she have that I don't?
I know.
Like,
I know. It sucks.
And
I know, like, I think about that all the time too. Or there's like, there's people. I was even like at that Lightbox Expo thing. Like, there's a guy there who's like just worked on like all these awesome films and stuff. And he's like 20, maybe I think he's like 25 now.
Yeah.
But like, me talking to any 25-year-old in life now, like, I'd be like, oh man, you're gonna be great, and like just like try to like be like an older but like seeing this guy, I was like so nervous. I was like, hey man.
Then he says to you, he's like, you're gonna do great someday.
I know. It's like, oh god damn.
Like, god damn it, I'm half a decade older than you.
I don't know why I'm so caught up on age, but like, I guess
I mean, I think it's it makes sense, like, because
anyone watching
it's
this
easily
is gonna be like, you guys are such idiots. You're still so young and like,
I know,
whatever. But
I think it's because it's an easily comparable, and tangible number.
Right.
But you are you're a 28-year-old, and I'm a 25-year-old, and it's like, I am not anywhere near as successful as you are so far. Like, but because that's a tangible way we can compare. Who you are versus who I am. It has nothing to do with your upbringing, has nothing to do with like your like financial situation, has nothing to do with.
I'm going to keep this recording just to like listen to
whatever. Like, it's all, there's so many circumstances that have to line up to get to a certain point.
No, it's true.
And I think it's part of it is I've said it's a bit of a trinity. It's like, you need to get lucky, you need to have skill to do the job or take the most opportunity out of that lucky break.
Yeah.
And then you need the personality to maintain it.
For sure.
Like, personality and skills to maintain it.
Yeah.
And having all this, like, not everyone gets that lucky break. Like, I've said my lucky break in my career was a phone call at 10 o'clock at night on a Wednesday.
Oh, sick.
And it was, can you be at Rogers tomorrow to edit commercials for Sportsnet for the next 2 days? And I was like, sure. Like, no idea that opportunity would snowball into like the biggest client and the most like interesting stuff of my career so far.
I know.
And that was my lucky break. It was my skill that kept them calling me back, and my personality that kept me in their good books later on. To keep
for sure.
Me.
Yeah, it's so
and who knows? I don't know what Margot Robbie's was. She's talented, incredibly talented.
Yeah.
And obviously smart enough to navigate the waters of Hollywood. So she just got her lucky break and managed to run with it.
Yeah.
Well, Wolf of Wall Street was like, I think she was the.
But she was acting before then. And like,
but I think but Wolf of Wall Street was her Hollywood break. Because again, that would have been what, she was like 23 or 22 or something.
So crazy to think. Yeah.
But
can you imagine being like 23 and then like acting
opposite
like,
Leonardo DiCaprio
and
for Scorsese?
Like,
yeah, I know, right?
That.
But that's what I mean. Is like, she had the lucky break to get to Hollywood at 23, when there's however many, like, skilled female actors in Australia working on Australian projects, doing short films and indie features and stuff. And she just landed that right lucky break, and that blew her up.
But yeah, it's like, but we're still talking about her all these years later because she's proven that she's fucking talented and is obviously like probably nice enough to work with.
Yeah.
And, like people keep wanting her. You're right.
Or she generates enough money. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
How much money do you earn?
We should just title this podcast
Margot Robbie's fan club.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of Margot Robbie.
It's just like, I only bring it up because I think it was after the, what's it called? Like the Hollywood movie. What's it called? Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh yeah.
And then I like looked up like her
Wikipedia or IMDb or something.
What the fuck?
She's so young.
She's younger than me, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever. Anyways.
But anyway, on the Margot Robbie note, we'll wrap it up there.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming out. I feel like this.
Thank you.
I have learned a lot today.
Yeah.
Yes, I genuinely
I
have.
hope I was somewhat useful. God damn.
Don't overthink it. Don't beat yourself up,
It's
man.
been really nice to just like talk to you again. I haven't
Thanks.
seen you
I
in
know.
forever.
I know. And it's also like I've said it every time, but it's nice to just like not have phones and just fucking shoot the shit for 2 hours with
this is the longest I've stared at someone's eyes.
I know. I've maintained
months.
so much eye contact doing this for the last little while.
Jesus.
It's great.
It was beautiful. I felt comforted in
Awesome.
your eye contact.
Perfect. I'm glad you felt comforted. Well, thanks, man.
Thank you. Is that what we do?
Yeah, well, I'm doing it this time.
Dope.